watched the handle on my back door turn slowly, then back up. Someone was testing it, from the outside, in the dark. I live alone, have for years. A small house at the end of a quiet street. I like my space a certain way. Everything has a place. I'm not obsessive about it, I just notice when something's off. You live alone long enough, the house becomes an extension of you. You know its sounds. You know where you left things. Which is why it started so small. It was a coffee mug. I'd left it in the sink in the morning, like always. When I got home from work, it was clean in the cupboard. I figured I'd done it without thinking. People run on autopilot in the morning. I let it go. A few days later, it was the thermostat. I keep it at 68. I came home and it was at 72. I live alone. Nobody touches that but me. Then it was a chair. A kitchen chair, pulled out and turned slightly facing the back window. I didn't leave it like that. I'm sure of it. But I'm sure of it isn't proof, and your brain will do anything to keep the world normal. So I told myself I'd bumped it. The thing that broke that story was the food. I meal prep on Sundays. Containers in the fridge lined up, one for each day. On a Wednesday, I opened the fridge and there were 2 missing. Not moved. Gone. Containers and all. That's when I stopped explaining it away. Because you don't misremember eating 2 full meals. And nobody had a key. Just me. I checked the doors. Locked. Windows. Locked. No broken glass, no pry marks, nothing. I almost convinced myself I was losing it. Then I remembered something. When I'd moved in, the landlord had mentioned the previous tenant left in a hurry and never returned their keys. He'd been meaning to change the locks. He never did. I changed them myself that night. New deadbolts, both doors. I felt stupid and relieved at the same time. Problem solved. For about a week, everything was normal. And then I came home and the bathroom light was on. I never leave it on. I stood in my own doorway and I listened to my own house, and for the first time, it didn't feel like mine. I called out, nothing. I went room to room with my heart going, and the house was empty. Doors still locked, new locks, no way in. But the light was on. So I bought a camera, one of those little indoor ones. I put it on a shelf in the living room, pointed at the hallway, and I went to work like normal. That night, I checked the footage. At 1:47 in the afternoon, while I was at work, a figure walks down my hallway. Calm, unhurried, like they live there. They go out of frame toward the kitchen. 11 minutes later, they walk back the other way and out of sight. I couldn't see a face. The hallway's dark, but it was a person, in my house, in the middle of the day, after I changed every lock. I called the police. They came, they took the footage, they searched. They found no sign of entry. They said they'd look into it. I moved out 2 weeks later, broke the lease, didn't care. Here's what I never got an answer to. How were they getting in after new locks, new deadbolts, with no broken windows and no marks on any door? The only thing I can think of, the only thing, is that they never left. That somewhere in that house there was a space I didn't know about, a crawl space, an attic gap somewhere behind a wall, and the whole time I was changing locks to keep someone out. They were already inside, waiting for me to leave, living in the gaps of my life. I think about the chair sometimes, the one pulled out facing the back window. I think about how it wasn't facing the window. It was facing the hallway, toward the bedrooms, toward where I slept. My wife and I bought our first house about 6 years ago. Older place, needed work, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a finished basement, an attic we mostly used for storage. We were happy there, for a while. It started with the water heater. Our bills were higher than they should have been, water especially. The plumber checked everything and found nothing wrong. "You're just using more than you think," he said. We weren't, but what do you say to that? Then the food thing started, and this is where I know how it sounds. Little stuff would go missing from the pantry. A few granola bars, half a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, gone. My wife thought I was snacking and not saying. I thought she was. We actually argued about it once, which is almost funny now. The sounds were the part we couldn't pin down. At night, the house would settle, except it didn't sound like settling. It sounded like footsteps, soft ones. Overhead sometimes. We have an attic, so I told myself it was the house, the wood, the pipes. Old houses talk. But old houses don't run water at 3 in the morning. I woke up one night and heard it clearly. Water moving through the pipes in the wall. The specific sound of a tap being turned on somewhere in the house. I lay there frozen, and then it stopped. I checked every faucet in the morning, all off, all dry. The night it ended, my wife was away at her sister's. I was alone, and around 2 a.m. I heard the footsteps again, but this time they weren't vague. They were above me, in the attic. Slow, deliberate, crossing from one side to the other. I want to tell you I grabbed a bat and went up there like a hero. I didn't. I called the police, and I sat in my car in the driveway until they came, and that was the smartest thing I have ever done. 2 officers went up into the attic. There was someone living up there. Behind the storage boxes, in the far corner under the eaves, there was a space, a sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, our food wrappers, bottles of water, a phone charger plugged into an outlet I didn't even know was up there. A little nest of a life tucked into the roof of my house. He wasn't there when they searched. There's a vent on the side of the attic that opens onto the porch roof. They think that's how he came and went, at night while we slept, down to the porch roof and into the yard, and back up before morning. They never caught him. No idea how long he'd been up there. Weeks, the officer guessed, maybe longer. Long enough to learn our schedule, when we left, when we slept. Long enough to come down into the house while we were gone, and almost certainly while we were home. We moved within the month. I couldn't sleep in that house again. Every sound was him. The detail I can't shake is the food. All those weeks we argued about granola bars and bread, blaming each other. There was a third person in our home, eating from our kitchen, listening to us fight about the very food he was taking. Listening to everything. A man lived in my house for who knows how long, and the only reason I ever found out was one night my wife happened to be gone, and he got a little careless with his footsteps. If she'd been home that night, I'd have blamed the house, like I always did. And he'd still be up there. My brother asked me to house sit while he and his family were overseas for 2 weeks. Nice house, nice neighborhood, the kind of quiet suburb where nothing happens. Water the plants, bring in the mail, keep the place lived in so it didn't look empty. Easy. I'd done it before. The first few days were nothing. I worked from his kitchen table, slept in the guest room, kept to a routine. The house was big and a little too quiet, but I didn't mind. On the 4th night, someone knocked on the door. It was late, past 11. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the side window and there was a man on the porch. 30s maybe, normal looking. He knocked again, then tried the handle, casually, like he expected it to open. I didn't open it. I called out through the door, asked who he was. He went still. Then he said, "Is Dave home?" My brother's name isn't Dave. I said he had the wrong house. There was a pause, too long. And then he said, "No, I don't." And he walked off the porch, back down the driveway, into the dark. I told myself it was a drunk guy at the wrong house. I almost believed it, but "no, I don't" stuck in me like a splinter. He'd said it like he knew exactly which house he was at. The next night, I noticed a car parked across the street. Not in a driveway, on the street, lights off. It hadn't been there before. I watched it for an hour. Nobody got out. Nobody drove off. Around 1 a.m., I went to bed, and when I looked in the morning, it was gone. The night after that, the back door handle moved. I was in the kitchen, lights off, getting water, and I watched the handle on the back door turn down slowly, then back up. Someone was testing it, from the outside, in the dark. Quietly, not knocking, not announcing themselves, trying to see if it was open. It was locked. I'd checked every lock every night since the porch. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And after a moment, I heard footsteps go down the back steps and across the yard. I called the police. They came. They checked the yard, the perimeter. They found a window screen at the side of the house had been removed and set neatly against the wall. The window behind it was locked, but the screen was off. Someone had been working on a way in. The officer asked me a question I didn't have a good answer to. He asked if anyone besides me knew the family was away, because whoever this was, he wasn't surprised the house was occupied. He'd adjusted. He came back. He tested doors. He worked a window. He was patient, like he'd been counting on the house being empty for 2 weeks and was working around the one thing he didn't plan for. Me. My brother came home early. We changed the locks, added cameras, the whole thing. Nothing else happened. Whoever it was never came back once the family returned. Which is the part that keeps me up. He knew they were gone. He knew the house should have been empty. He had a 2-week window and he was using it, patiently, carefully, one night at a time. If my brother hadn't asked me to stay there, that house would have been dark and empty and unwatched for 14 straight nights. And he knew it.